money intersects every aspect of one's life. There isn't one part of one's life where money doesn't play a role in some way. Money is a zero-sum game. Money is a scarce resource. If you have it, I don't. If I have it, you don't. That is just a lie. It's just not the truth. It's not how money works. The mistake that a lot of folks make is they think referrals is kind of icing on the cake. But it really, in a lot of business, it is the cake. It's how people really do want to meet you. Whatever your sales process may be, if you're working from referrals and introductions, it's going to make everything else work better, easier. Because you're getting in front of more of the right people in the most efficient, most cost-effective, most powerful way.
This is the Relentless Pursuit of Winning podcast, where we are here to educate, equip, and inspire people to build extraordinary companies. We're so glad you're here. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you can get updates every time we drop a new episode. Now let's get it started. Hey guys, we're back with another episode of the Relentless Pursuit of Winning podcast. My name is Rick Meekins. I am your host, and in the studio we have Bill Cates. How are you today, sir?
I'm doing well, Rick. And, sometimes people get me confused. They hear Bill Cates and they think Bill Gates. Did Rick
I'm sorry, you're not Bill Gates?
Oh, yeah. What booking service did this to you? Here's the deal. Look, Bill Gates has a lot of money. That's cool. Bill Cates missed it by one letter, a couple of bucks, but maybe I'll help you make more money. How's that sound?
Hey, you know what? I think a lot of people absolutely love that. I
Yeah.
think they will love that.
Yeah.
Before we get into that, folks, if you haven't done it, please like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you can get updates every time we drop a new episode. And without further ado, let's get to it. So, Bill, give us a little bit of your background, who you are, what you do, and why you do what you do.
Yeah, boy, it depends how far back you want to go. I was a drummer in a rock and roll band a long time ago at a graduate school. Yeah, I wanted to. I worked my way through college playing in bands, weddings, things like that. But I thought, what would it be like to do this full time? So for a few years after college, I did that, and then realized I did a little bit of a talent assessment and realized that, I'm probably not meant to be the full time touring the country professional drummer like I thought I could be. So I went into business and I had a long road, but eventually got into the book publishing business and built and sold 2 book publishing companies. Now, when people say they sold the business, it sounds like, oh, you cashed out, you made a lot of money. Well, a little bit of both. So I did make a pretty penny with one of them. The other I got out of a bad partnership and let him take on the debt of that particular business. So had a big win and a little win on selling the business. And then a friend of mine said, Bill, you could be a business consultant, speaker, author. You've learned so much. You're good on stage, yada, yada. I said, well, okay, let me look into that. So for really 34 years, I've been working with entrepreneurs and professionals, helping them grow their business. I have a fondness for prospecting and marketing and finding the right clients and messaging value and getting more referrals. And so that's really what I've been dedicated to for the last 34 years or so.
Mm-hmm. What would you say? Well, let me back up a little
Sure,
bit.
yeah.
What is the most important thing you want our audience to get out of the show today?
Well, I guess a couple of things. One, I've got a new book, and I certainly would love to talk about my new book called The Hidden Heist, and that is about money mindset. So, most of us have, stories around money. When I say stories, it's our beliefs, our assumptions, things we tell ourselves, and we start to believe them to be true. We treat them as nonfiction, but they're really sometimes fiction. So I would love to talk about money and how we bring more and attract more and have the right mindset. But we can talk about other things. We can talk about how we message our value. We can talk about how we get more referrals. I'm game.
Cool. So you've been in the game for, you said 34 years plus, the businesses that you have. What's been the most important thing that you've learned, or the most impactful thing you've learned?
Well, I'll tell you one of the things is how do you stay relevant? I've had to stay relevant for a long time. Any business needs to stay relevant, obviously, or you won't be in business. And then, of course, your messaging, how you message your value has to be relevant. I just happened to write a book called Radical Relevance. So shameless plug there. But really, it's how have I stayed relevant over these years? And one of the ways I've done that is I've learned that when you solve a problem, whatever your product service might be, you solve a
Hmm.
problem, or you help someone take advantage of an opportunity, usually kind of the flip side of the same coin. Sometimes you create or expose a new problem or a new opportunity. So what I've learned is building on those, solving problems, leveraging opportunities, and not staying static, always evolving. So that's one thing. Let me tell you another thing I learned, and it's in the book Radical Relevance. I learned this from a venture capitalist, Michael Scott, out of New England. And so the best way to position a business, a product, a service, is when it solves a blatant critical need. Well, let me explain that. So blatant meaning the prospects for your product or service, they know they need it,
Hmm.
right? They know they want it. They have an awareness there. You don't have to educate them on that. And then it's not aspirational, but it's critical,
Hmm.
meaning there's a time frame, they're bleeding money, they're missing an opportunity. Now, is it possible to build a business that's not based on blatant critical needs? Yeah, you can do it. It's just harder.
Hmm.
So that's one of the things I've always tried to do is how do I tap into product service with my prospects, knowing they need it. There's an awareness they need it, and it's not a nice to do, it's a have to do. And that's always a better place to position a business. So that's something I learned a long time ago. I've tried to live that as best I can over the years.
Yeah, 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 yeah. You so as far as relevance,
Hmm.
you're known as a referral coach.
Referral coach. Yeah,
How do
that's the big, yeah.
you so this is something that you've how long have you had that moniker or been known for that?
Yeah, probably at least 30 years. Yeah,
So how does one so that's something that hasn't changed. And so
correct.
this is something that you're known for.
Yes.
This is something, that's, associated with your name. How do you develop that and how do you keep that relevant?
Yeah. So, first of all, what happened is when I first got started in my business, consulting, speaking, writing, again, I like prospecting. I like the thrill of the hunt. I like finding the right person and all of that. And then along the way, I realized how powerful the referral process is because whatever your sales process may be, if you're working from referrals and introductions, it's going to make everything else work better, easier, right? Because you're getting in front of more of the right people in the most efficient, most cost effective, most powerful way. So I decided to focus in on the referral process. My first book, Unlimited Referrals, came out in 1996. I've since had several, I guess, 5 other books on referrals since then. And the mistake that a lot of folks make is they think uh, referrals is kind of icing on the cake.
Mhm.
But it really, in a lot of business, it is the cake. It's how people really do want to meet you. So let's build a business based on how people want to meet you. So it started with a decision, and then I wrote a book, which is a great way to get your head around a body of knowledge. Somebody told me when I was writing my first book, he says, "Book, Bill, just writing the book, even if it never sees the light of day and people never read it, it will
Yeah.
still be a tremendous exercise because you're going to get your head around a body of knowledge."
Yeah.
And that's true. It got me better at what I did. And so then another thing I did was I picked kind of a target industry. So a lot of the work I do, not all the work I do, but a lot of work I do is in financial services, financial advisors, wealth advisors, planners, the whole range of financial, which is kind of what led me to my newer book, The Hidden Heist, which I know we'll get to. And so it's easier to create a reputation for yourself when you're not trying to be something to everybody, right? When you have a narrow target market. So I learned that the power of that a long time ago, and so that's helped me stay relevant and keep that moniker. So kind of everybody in the financial, or a lot of people at least in the financial services industry, know me for that. Now there's a double-edged sword there because I'm known for that. When people think referrals, they think Bill Cates. That's great. And I brought some other things to the market too that I need to get in there, the radical relevance, the hidden heist, all the other things. So
Yeah.
when you become known for one thing, Expanding that is not always easy. It's possible, and I'm doing it, but it's not always easy. So I don't know if that answers the question, but I've worked hard, and I interview people, I coach. I find that coaching is not just a revenue stream for me, but is part of my relevance laboratory. Because as
Hmm.
I coach people and help them and watch them implement what I teach, and
Hmm.
I learn what they do that I hadn't thought of, because they do some neat things too. I just become and stay more relevant to my market.
Hmm. 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 Still can't believe you're a drummer in a rock band. It's like you go from one extreme to the other, starving artist to
Yeah, I'll tell you, man. My social life was nightclubs and concert venues, and I'd be up till 2, 3, 4 in the morning. Now back then, clubs, people could smoke in clubs. I'd lay my head on the pillow at 3 in the morning. My eyes would tear from the smoke in my eyes. The my mother was always supportive of me being a musician until I became a professional musician. Because to her, professional musician, she was from New York, grew up in the Depression and all that. To her, professional musician meant nightclubs and drug use and nothing good, right? So it was kind of interesting how she supported me until it became professional. And then, yeah, but I still have my drum set up. I still play mostly for myself when my wife isn't home because I can't play when she's home.
no comments on that.
Yeah.
Okay, moving right along.
Yes, sir. Yeah, it doesn't mean it's bad. It's just noisy. That's all. It's just loud.
I always there was I don't remember who it was. It might have been Bart Simpson. This no, it was it the it was a comic strip from like years and years ago. Something about the family, and there's a little boy named Bobby,
Mm.
and I just remember this one clip where he goes, "If you're looking for me and you can't find me, I'll be down in the basement playing the drums." It's like
You can't find me. Yeah, right.
not
That,
gonna happen, right?
yeah, that is funny.
Um, Big topic.
Yes.
Let's talk about money.
Yeah.
You talked about beliefs around money, and I know it's this economy where we are right now. I'm having lots and lots of conversations with people that are in various places, and some of it does have to do with beliefs, and I
Yes.
would love to get your take on this.
Yeah. So what happened? Just a little the backstory, real quick, is in writing the Hidden Heist. My first iteration of the book actually was the working title was "You Earn What You Believe," and it comes from the principle. Really, I could say my belief, but I think it's a principle that if you're stuck in something, if you're stuck with your business, if you're stuck in a relationship, there's something not working. There's a complaint, right? It's not working.
Hmm.
We look for a strategy. We look for a tactic. That's okay. Nothing wrong with that. And sometimes we need to take a step back and look at the belief. What do we believe about ourselves, about the other person, about the economy, about the industry, about our product, about our service? What because there's often limiting beliefs here, and we're you can't see the picture when you're in a frame, and so that's what this book, The Hidden Heist, is based on. That we all have these. We grow up and we learn with these limiting beliefs, mistaken assumptions, unhelpful emotions that lead to unproductive, counterproductive behavior around money. And so I decided I wanted to convey that message and help people create awareness and then some solutions moving forward. But I wanted to do it in a story form. I wanted to do it in kind of in a fun way. So that's the Hidden Heist. It's a parable book. It's a tale. It takes place in a bank robbery. So there's some immediate tension, but the bank robber's a little bumbly. So there's some comic relief. And there's a hero, Alton Beckett. And while the bank robbers are slowly trying to figure out how to get past SWAT or how to get out of this mess that they created for themselves, and they really weren't bad people so much. I mean, they got caught and all that stuff, but they weren't there to hurt anybody. Let's put it that way. We'll give them a little slack. But so they're trying to get out of this thing, and the other folks in the bank gather in the vault. And Alden Beckett, turns out he's a financial advisor, so he's the guide. In the parable book, there's always a guide. And they ordered pizza, and they're writing all the things he said on the pizza boxes, and it's kind of a fun thing. And through that, and I have to give a lot of credit to my co-author Jeff C. West, who the idea was kind of mine, and the things I wanted to convey were kind of mine, but he brought the characters to life. All of them are based on real people. The hostage negotiator, we interviewed one for the book. We interviewed 2 bank robbery victims. I interviewed over 100 people around their money stories. I've heard it all around beliefs and actions around money. And so it's so that I think that's what makes the book so good, is because it's based on reality.
Hmm.
Now, I'm the straightforward guy. So even though the lessons come out in the story, I wanted to make sure that the lessons really came out. So we have 3 appendices that, just in case you missed it in the story, here's the straight stuff, get it here. And so we can get into some of the beliefs and some of the solutions and all that. But that's just a little backstory around why we wrote the hidden heist and what we're trying to accomplish with it.
Hmm. 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 Yeah, let's get into the beliefs. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Get your take on that.
Yeah, so I think it starts out, the biggest one really is that money is a zero sum game. Money is a scarce resource. If you have it, I don't. If I have it, you don't. And that is just a lie. It's just not the truth. It's not how money works. Now, it may feel scarce in your pocket, in your bank account. I get that. And that's real, and you have to deal with it. And once you understand how money works, and this is how my own beliefs and anxiety around money, how I became aware and how I started to rewrite my story, if you will, by learning how money works. And so one of the words for money is currency. Current. If you look at the derivation of the word currency, it really does mean flow,
Hmm.
river, from French and from Old English. Money flows. And to create more opportunity for money, we have to get in the flow. We have to understand it's not a zero sum game, which is what helps create an abundance mindset. So I have a lot of competitors, but they're friendly competitors. I have an abundance mindset. We work together to help. It's not fighting over the pie. We build a bigger pie. And that comes from understanding, again, the flow and how money works. And so how I got in the flow, and how many of the folks who listen to your show get in the flow. So I'm kind of speaking to the choir on this one. One of the ways to make money, one of the ways to get in the flow, is to help other people make money. And so that's a principle that I learned. And so that's a big one, this whole scarcity mindset. And I think that humans are kind of born into scarcity a little, in the sense that, the old reptilian brain is looking to, is there enough food? Is there enough shelter? Is there enough warmth, or whatever? So we're kind of fighting against that a little bit. Now, another thing that happens is
Let
yeah,
me interject.
I'll pause. I'll pause.
So it sounds like you're talking strictly from the sales perspective. So if someone buys from you, they're not going to buy from me. Is that
Well,
is
that's
that
a
where you're
way that
leaning?
yeah, that could be the way it works. And look, competition is real, and I'm trying to win the business versus someone else. I once had someone say to me, "Competition is for the competent," which I like that. I've never feared competition.
Hmm.
There's a lot of people that have tried to get into my space and are getting into my space, and I say, "That's fine. I just got to be better. I just got to be more relevant, and all of that." So yeah, but it's more than that. It's when one and one there's a lot of scarcity thinking in this world, and when someone has a scarcity mindset, whether they're in business or not, it doesn't matter. They're going to miss opportunity that's in front of them.
Hmm.
They're going to make decisions based on scarcity and not abundance. And so, let me give you an example. My father grew up in the Depression. All right. One could forgive him for having a scarcity mindset, a very conservative mindset. So he worked for the federal government for 30 odd years, made a decent living, saved pretty well, but never really invested, never really got his hard earned money working hard for him. And so that's where a scarcity mindset can show up. It's not just in business and sales and marketing and entrepreneurship. It can show up in a lot of. My mother, similar in the sense, she always used to say, you never quit a job until you have the next job lined up.
My mom said that.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's practical. I get it. And okay, that can make sense in certain cases. Yeah. And I had an abundance mindset. I had a bit of an entrepreneurial spirit. Where that came from, Rick, I couldn't tell you, because it did come from my parents.
Right.
So, but I didn't subscribe to that, because I kind of had a low level of trust that I knew I would be able to make it happen. But we get these messages from our parents initially. Most people, parents or guardians, whoever brings us up,
Mhm.
they get solidified around 7 or 8. And one of the exercises I do with folks is have them think, what are the first messages you got? Did your parents fight about money? Did they talk about money? Was it there's never enough money message? I know people who do well financially, but there's that never enough money in their mind, and they have trouble enjoying their money.
Yeah.
And
Seen
then
that.
the social media and the media piles on with negative messages around people that are wealthy. People that are wealthy are cheat, dishonest, they're greedy, right. Well, some are, most aren't. And so there's a stereotype, but you can't become what you resent. You can't become what you don't want to be. And so if you grew up with in a message around, resentful of people that have a lot of money, that's something you're fighting. Now you can get past it, but you're fighting it. So that's some
Yeah.
of the stuff that we all have to deal with and get past and rewire the brain a little bit so we see things differently.
You know where I've seen people, and there's studies on this.
Hmm.
They were saying that essentially homeless people tend to be the most generous people out there. So, you give a homeless person $100, he may be likely to share that with other people. And so I would think that that person is demonstrating an abundance mindset, but they're not able to enjoy some of the things that, other folks that aren't homeless
Yes.
or help me in that. Help
Well,
me understand how that all
it
fits
sounds a bit
together.
like a contradiction, I guess, doesn't it? And my first my first response is it's complicated. Um, and for instance, a lot of you might look. I'm not an expert on folks that are homeless, and
Mhm.
I don't pretend to be. And with that said, if I can just kind of bring my thinking into this a little bit, I would say there's probably two camps. There's one camp where some of these folks, they have, mental disabilities, if you will. It could be chemical imbalance, it could be PTSD. They have, real honest to goodness mental, psychological, emotional challenges. Okay. And, they may be very intelligent. Some of them are probably quite intelligent and quite bright. But they're facing those challenges that, they don't see the world in quite the same way that other people do. Doesn't mean they can't be generous, right? It doesn't mean they can't be helpful of other people around them. They're human. They form relationships with other people that they know. And so that's a human trait to be generous. Then the other camp are folks who've just come into some pretty tough times, right?
Right.
And tough circumstances. And, you could say through no decision or no fault of their own. Well, yeah, maybe they may have made some decisions that could have prevented what happened to them. I don't know. I'm not going to judge.
Sure.
And then, tough things happen to good people.
Yeah.
And so that we address that in the book just a little bit in the stereotypes that, the stereotype of rich people are greedy and selfish. Yeah, some are, most aren't. This came from my co-author, Jeff C. West, by the way. I love it. Some are, most aren't, right? Or most are, some aren't. This is when people generalize around others and
Yeah.
stereotypes. That's one of my pet peeves of those generalizations. So we talk about people that, that are poor, or disadvantaged, or don't have a lot of money. They're lazy, right? They don't care. They're stupid. Well, maybe some are, but most aren't. There's a lot of hardworking poor people out there, right? And facing a lot of challenges, but they're not lazy and they're not stupid and they're figuring it out, right? So some are, most aren't, right? So fighting those stereotypes. And look, I'm telling you, if you carry those stereotypes around with you one way or another, and you judge the world using those stereotypes, that's a blockage for you bringing more money into your life. That's an energetic blockage. So again, the first step, and that's what we hope the hidden heist will be for a lot of folks, is the awareness builder of what is our story, what is our relationship to money.
Yeah.
Could it be a better one? And then if so, how do we go about doing that?
Okay. You talked about, and I don't know if this is number 2 on your list, but you talked about energy
Yeah,
around money.
yeah. So money is a lot of things. Money
Mhm.
is currency. Money allows the exchange of goods and services.
Can I real quick?
Yeah.
When you talk about money, you talk about currency. Are you talking about cash,
Well, not
or
anymore.
what are we?
I'm talking.
Let's be clear on definitions for me.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So when I'm talking about money, I'm not necessarily talking about cash. Uh, used to be, that's all it used to be, cash, green, lettuce, whatever. It started out with shells. There's a lot of evidence that the history of money goes back to some folks who used to trade these special kinds of seashells that
Hmm.
were hard to find. There was a rareness to them, and so there was a value to them, and then so that became a currency. But really, mostly I'm talking about money as a currency, money that allows us to accomplish certain things in our life, to purchase things, purchase experiences, purchase
Hmm.
products and goods. That's what I'm talking about mostly.
So
We are
just like
moving
just a medium of exchange, whatever
medium
whatever
of
that is.
exchange. Yep.
Okay.
And but it also is an energy because it's money is something that it's decided upon. It works because people see it as having value and value in the future, right? We believe that this will have value in the future. Otherwise, we
Right.
wouldn't accept it now.
Right. Right.
So now in the United States, where you and I are, it's backed by the federal government, at least theoretically. And so and how does crypto work? Crypto, there's a leap of faith there, right? Now it's cashless,
Hmm.
but the idea of cashless currency has been around long before the computer was ever invented. John Maynard Keynes actually had a model of a cashless society where it was more of a ledger society where you record transactions on a ledger. So this whole idea of crypto, it works better, easier with computers and all that. But it's been actually the concept's been around for quite a long time since World War II. Sorry, and in any event, but when you think of energy as money, I'm sorry, think of money as energy. Going too fast here. Uh, then you realize that it is something you can attract and build. I think of it as in two levels. I think of it as a very practical, mundane. Yes, I can buy goods, services, experiences. And I also realize there's an energy there that if I get into the flow, I can attract, I can create more value, I can create more of that. It's a little woo woo, it's a little bit esoteric, but it does help to understand that it's not just the dollar in your hand.
Yeah, yeah. I was as you were talking about it, as you talk about it in terms of sort of energy, what occurred to me is we use money as an exchange typically between two people,
Hmm.
and I kind of get I kind of get that flow of energy because you kind of attract certain people to you that, that want to do business with you or that
Yeah.
you want to do business with,
Yes.
and your attitude, your approach would probably impact that relationship. So that makes sense. That makes
Yep.
sense to me.
Yep. Yep.
Cool. What else? What other beliefs do we have around money?
Well, that money will. Well, let me give you. I've got they're spinning in my head. All right. So here's one. Money isn't important. I don't care about money. There's a lot of people that say, "Well, money's not that important to me. I don't really care about that money." Now, let's look at that. And I'm not saying it's not true. Look, if someone has kind of a Zen non-attachment approach to worldly goods, more power to them.
Mhm.
You know,
Yeah.
sometimes I wish I could get to that place a little bit better. I mean, look, Rick, I went to a time where I attached my self-worth to my net worth. I
Yeah.
played that game,
I
bigger
see people
house.
do that all the time.
My net worth was measured by square footage of my home and all of that. And look, I still like those nice things, but I just realized that that's not what my net worth does not create my self-worth. It's if anything, it should flow the other direction.
Mhm.
All right, back to the idea of, money is important, isn't important. Money intersects every aspect of one's life. There isn't one part of one's life where money doesn't play a role in some way, even on
Yeah.
the spiritual side. So, to say I don't care about money, money doesn't bore that's like saying oxygen isn't important, until you don't have it. So what I found for a lot of people, and we just have to be honest with ourselves, is that true? Or are you caught in money denial? Are you caught in an anxiety around money that then how you mask that is by saying, well, it's not that important. You don't pay attention to it, but really you don't pay attention to it because there's anxiety. So let me show you how that shows up. I barely met a person that doesn't have some anxiety around money. I've met, people with 40 million, worth 40 million, 50 million. It shows up on every rung of the economic ladder.
Hmm.
Anxiety, fear, even shame around money. That's a big one. Not just for people who don't have a lot of money who feel shame, but people who have a lot of money also get into this shame game.
Yeah.
So here's what happens. So we have anxiety, right? So it usually shows up in two ways, two main ways. One is kind of money denial, financial denial. I was in that for a while. I was masked by what I thought was an abundance mindset. I just
Hmm.
knew it'll be taken care of, abundance mindset. The truth was I was anxious about money and I was avoiding looking at my numbers. I was avoiding looking at things. And so I was, let's just say I was underwatering my money tree, if you will. Wasn't paying attention. And that's what anxiety will do. You just want to put it off and not deal with it. Um, the other way it shows up is overwatering your money tree. There's two killers of houseplants, by the way, underwatering, overwatering. So I like the metaphor. And that's anxiety where you're just like looking at the market, you're looking at your investments, you're looking at the value of your house. It's just like every day, did the market go up? Did it go down? It's like, right. And you get caught into that.
Yeah.
And you're not playing a longer game with your investments and a longer awareness of how compounding and how all this works.
Right.
And so what happened for me is when you learn how money works, then quite often you start to become aware of your beliefs and your assumptions and your unhelpful emotions. I'll give you an unhelpful emotion. We know this to be true, and this has been studied, is if the emotional response to earning $100 in the market, let's say the market goes up 1%.
Hmm.
The emotional response of the market going up 1% versus the emotional response of the market going down 1%. For most human beings, the emotional response when that market goes down 1% is twice as strong as the emotion for when the market goes up. And I
Hmm.
think as humans, we're just kind of built that way. So that fear of loss is a stronger emotion than the excitement of gain.
Hmm.
All right. So when you understand that and you realize your money behavior and money mindset and how money works, then you can start to look, does that all go away right away? Did my money anxiety go away totally? No. I still, that song still plays. But what I do is I just reach over to that metaphorical volume knob and turn the volume down a little bit. And I just don't let it rule me anymore.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how this shows up. And so in the Hidden Heist, we tried to, number one, create the awareness for the reader and then give some ideas and some steps forward of things you can do, not just to learn about your money mindset, but to also start to take better steps towards, bringing more money into your life and creating lasting wealth and all that
Yeah.
sort of.
Well, you mentioned under and overwatering
Yeah.
your money tree, so to speak.
Yes.
Tell us more about that. What does that look like? What does under or
Yeah.
over and
Yeah. So
properly
all
watering?
right. So for me, and I can, speak best about my own story. I've done, like I said, over 100 money interviews, and I've been in the financial services business or industry for 30 odd years. So I've seen it all. And with that said, my story is the one I know the best. So yeah, for me, it was a denial. It was I early on in my business career, I avoided learning how to look at balance sheets. I avoided learning how to look at my numbers. I avoided measuring. The way I was keeping scores, I had more money in my account coming in than was going out, and it was about as simple as that. Well, okay, that's a good measure, but that's not all. And I wasn't looking at trends. I was avoiding, and it came from an anxiety. Right? So I was underwatering the tree, if you will. I wasn't paying attention to the money tree. is really what
Right.
it meant. And so then I learned how money worked, and then I started investing, and I started taking care of compounding, taking advantage of compounding and all that kind of stuff. And as the more successful I became, the more financial tools and vehicles I could take advantage of, hedge funds and real estate and all that kind of stuff. So I started to learn about that, and I started to engage in that. But my anxiety never went away. So
Mhm.
the anxiety just flipped.
Mm.
It just flipped to the overwatering, and I was paying too close attention to that stuff.
Mm.
And if the market went down a couple percent, it would be, ah, I would let it get to me. And finally, what happened is like that's no way to live. Let me give you another story. Just my brother-in-law, God rest his soul. When COVID hit in 2020, and then the market had that little mini crash for a few months, after that, March, April. Um, he got on the phone and he says, "Bill, I'm going to cash. I'm going to cash. I got to go to cash. Because the market went way down. His investments were about, down by 30%, give or take." And I said, "No, George, please do not go to cash. This is not the time to go to cash. If anything, if you've got spare cash, you want to get in the market, it's going to go up." And I even gave him my favorite metaphor, right, of the stock market. It's someone walking up a flight of stairs with a yo-yo, up and down, but eventually up. It's always up. The S&P 500 over the last 50 years has averaged 11.6%. The market goes up more days than it goes down. There's all kinds of things to know about how money works. But his money anxiety and his fear, in his case, of losing, right? He had already lost 30%, but his fear of losing made him, and despite my advice, he went to cash and never got back in before he passed about 5 years later. And so now, you can't take it with you. So the net effect was my wife didn't inherit as much money as she could have. But the point isn't that, right? The point is how our emotional relationship to money creates bad behavior.
Yeah.
People try to time the market, and most humans should not be trying to time the market. Even those who are doing it and do it pretty well rarely beat the S&P 500. And there's been experiments around that, all kinds of stuff. So anyway, so I don't know if that elaborates a little more on the underwatering, overwatering, and just what I call them unhelpful emotions, and that turns into unhelpful behavior and counterproductive behavior.
Yeah, it sounds like both sides are, really, there's a level of anxiety. There's a level of, hey, this is, I don't know how this thing works. And so you said like 3 or 4 times, it's like how money works. How does money work? What is there a simple
Well,
formula or framework or something?
Yeah, I'll give you a few. I'm just trying to think of where to start with this. I think the first one to go to really, and we cover this in the Hidden Heist, is compounding. Now, some of the folks listening will understand this. Some will wonder how come no one ever taught me this before. That was my reaction when I learned about compounding. My dad never taught me about compounding, and because he didn't know, he couldn't teach me what he didn't know because nobody taught him. And that's one of the problems in our society is we don't get taught about money. We don't, and families don't talk, and schools don't talk. We learn quadratic equations and Pythagorean theorems, but we don't learn compounding. Now, Albert Einstein is often quoted as saying compounding, when it comes to money, compounded interest is the eighth wonder of the world. He who understands it earns it. He who doesn't pays it. Now he's talking about compounding interest of money well invested over time.
Mhm.
I can give you a couple examples in a minute. Or compounded debt, compounded interest on debt, and just witness people with, student loans and credit card debt. Now, a real quick aside, if you look up the eighth wonder of the world and Albert Einstein, you will see memes, you will see quotes. And the truth is, there's no concrete evidence that Albert Einstein actually ever said that. But he's a smart guy, and so why not believe it? And it is true.
Uh,
So compounding. All right. So why didn't somebody tell me this when I was 18? All right. So if I was 18 years old and somebody gave me $100 for graduation, And I didn't go out and buy new tennis shoes or back then it would have been maybe a Sony Walkman or something. I don't know what was popular. I'm showing my age. Um, but I
I
but I
wasn't gonna
put it
help you
but I
with
put
that.
it in S&P 500. I put it in a low cost ETF S&P 500, and then let's say I can manage $50 a month until 65. I'd have
Uh-huh.
over $1.2 million. That's how compounding works. And
Yeah.
compounding's best friend is time.
Mhm.
It's continual money put in on a regular basis is called dollar cost averaging. We put money in on a regular basis as much as we can on a regular basis, and it's money well invested. S&P 500 is darn good, and that's what will happen. Now, you take my daughter; she's 33. If she took $100 and could manage $200 a month, let's say, averaging $200 a month, by the
Mhm.
time she's 67, she'd have over $1 million. So I have a guide called The Ordinary Millionaire, and anybody listening can go get it, theordinarymillionaire.com, where we talk about how anybody, salary, entrepreneur, it doesn't matter, can become a millionaire, a multimillionaire through the power of compounding. You don't save what's left after spending, you spend what's left after saving. That's from Warren Buffett. And so that's one of the huge examples of how money works. And it's a core, but most people don't know that and don't understand that. And so they wait and they wait and they wait, and then they don't have time on their side. And then they start to have a limiting belief that I've waited too long, it's too late,
Yeah.
why bother? Which is also a mistake. Now, a lot of the folks listening here have an entrepreneurial mindset, a growth, a sales mindset. Uh, uh, the good news is when you have that kind of mindset and and you understand that money follows value, right? That's a principle. Money follows value, that you do have the ability to catch up. And that's what happened to me. I didn't learn about compounding. I'm doing pretty darn well, but I would have been even further ahead had I known about it, but I had the ability to catch up because of my entrepreneurial spirit and inclination. Folks who don't have that better start early, or
Yeah.
they're going to be, it will be too late to at least create the wealth they wish they had.
Nice. Nice. Very nice. So, your book, when's your book coming out?
Yeah. Well, it should be out by the time people listen to this. I know we're recording this prior to launch date, but it's September 16th. The book launches. It's available in hardcover, paperback, Kindle. And I want to mention the audiobook, the Audible, because, all right, so this is a parable. It's a story. There's characters. Now, the last two books I wrote, Radical Relevance and The Language of Referrals, I read those books. I made the audiobooks because it's straightforward. I read them. Great. People like to hear the author's voice, I suppose. Okay. But this book was different. My co-author, Jeff C. West, and I could have maybe tried to voice the characters, but we actually found a guy, Jonathan McLean, who is a professional book reader. He does Simon & Schuster, Random House Audio. And that's what he does. And I've listened to 5 of his books on audio now. Jonathan McLean is in my head
Mhm.
because of the books I've listened to and how good he is. But we had him bring this to life. So look, if you like the tangible book, yeah, get the paperback, get the hardcover, get the Kindle if you like it electronic. But if you like to listen to a good story, then the Audible version of the Hidden Heist might be your cup of tea.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Is there anything you want to leave our audience with?
Yeah, I guess 2 things. I think 2 things that might be appropriate for your folks. Couple, couple of lessons I've learned. 3 life lessons. Number one, I got this from the old famous coach Vince Lombardi from the Green Bay Packers, who said, "Fatigue makes cowards of us all." Fatigue makes cowards of us all. And so I learned a long time ago that when I'm thinking negative thoughts, when I'm getting down on myself or project, business, whatever it is, I just say, "Bill, are you tired?" And usually I am. And so, hence there's a relationship. That's one. Another lesson I learned was only fight honorable battles. Only get into a battle or an argument when it's honorable, when there's something so critical at stake. that it's worth fighting for, because we know, especially when it comes to our partners and friends, spouses and whatnot, winning is a booby prize, right? You may feel like you're right and you've won the battle, but the relationship may very well be damaged. And so a lot of times I walk away from the battles. My dad was a boxer. I wanted him to teach me how to box. He says, I'm going to teach you how to walk away from a fight. And I appreciate that counsel, but there's still a part of me wishes he taught me how to box, right? And then the last one, which goes to the book, The Hidden Heist, is don't believe everything you believe. Right? Every now and then, take time out to question your beliefs. They may be true, they may be serving you, and they may not be. And beliefs change, beliefs can be refined and evolve. And let's take a look at this.
Well said, well said. Thank you so much, Bill Cates. I really enjoyed having you on the show.
Hey, my pleasure, Rick. It's great getting to know you. I've enjoyed all our conversations leading up to this point, and hope we can keep supporting each other moving forward.
Likewise, sounds like a plan. Sounds like a plan.
You bet.
Folks, thanks so much for listening to or watching another episode of the Relentless Pursuit of Winning podcast. We'll catch you next time.